Here is an IBM IntelliStation M Pro computer. But this is a generic name because there have been many different versions of the IntelliStation M Pro. This specific one is type 6218. The IBM IntelliStation was the predecessor to the Lenovo ThinkStation. IBM created the first ThinkPad and ThinkCenter, but the ThinkStation didn't exist until after Lenovo bought IBM's computer division. The IntelliStations were entirely built by IBM. These are workstation class computers with lots of features and high-end hardware for the time. It wasn't your typical home PC, but it still has a relatively stylish design, with honeycomb pattern on the cooling vents. This crest is just for decoration, it doesn't have cooling vents here. On the front there's a DVD reader. It can read CDs and DVD-R and RW too, but it can't burn anything, not even CDs. Even this plate to cover up the drive has a special design on it, instead of being a plain piece of plastic. That white thing is the power button, and if you think that's tiny, you're right. Its design is awful. It's too small for any adult human's finger. Maybe it's missing a part, I don't know, but you can see it does have a symbol for a power button there. It looks like the previous owner was pressing this power button with a pencil, hence why it looks dirty. But I'm gonna use a closed pen instead. And sometimes it gets stuck. Here we have a 3.5-inch floppy drive, headphone and microphone jacks, two USB 2.0 ports, and a FireWire port, also known as IEEE 1394. On the back, this IBM M Pro has way more ports and expansion capability than a first-generation Apple M1 Pro, such as two serial ports and a parallel port. We'll try one of these legacy ports later. Also, there's a line-in jack, line-out jack, PS2 keyboard and mouse, 6 USB ports, all 2.0, gigabit Ethernet, and a larger FireWire port. There's no onboard video, it needs a dedicated graphics card. So those are the video outputs. It also has an option to lock the case. I didn't get the key with it, but it's unlocked. Here's the bottom of this IBM computer with its information sticker and its Windows XP product key sticker. To open this case, we have to press this button and slide the case towards the back. Normally there's this piece of metal inside, which is designed to hold two additional 3.5-inch hard drives. So you can install 3 hard drives in this computer, one in this bay and 2 over here. And it comes with mounting screws. But since I only want to have 1 hard drive here, I just unscrewed this and removed it, so there's more free space. The power supply is 400 watts. The CPU is an Intel Pentium 4 631 at 3.0 GHz. It's from the Cedar Mill series, so it doesn't heat up so much like a Prescott Pentium 4, but of course, being a Pentium 4, it still heats up a little bit. The graphics card is an NVIDIA Quadro FX 550 with 128 MB of video RAM. It plugs in via PCI Express x16. And it has that screwless mechanism to install the cards, which I really like. So you just slot in your stuff there and you don't have to screw it in. Other expansion slots are regular PCI, PCI Express x8, and PCI Express x1. The optical drive is IDE. There's the floppy drive and there's the hard drive, which is SATA. This is one of the earliest SATA systems. There's the SATA power and data connectors. And over there is also a Molex power connector, just in case you're using an older power supply that doesn't have SATA power connectors. Of course, you're only supposed to use 1 power connector at once. One interesting thing is that the FireWire port at the front is just a cable with this larger connector to the smaller connector. And on the motherboard itself, there's the larger FireWire connector. Unfortunately, I don't have anything that uses FireWire yet, so I can't test those ports, but they should work. It has 1 GB of DDR2 RAM, which can be upgraded up to 8, which was a lot back in 2005 when this computer was new. However, it takes special RAM sticks with error correction. I don't know if regular DDR2 sticks without ECC work. I haven't tried it. For what I want to do on this computer, 1 gig is enough. And one pretty amazing thing is that this computer has a mini PCI slot. It was empty, but I installed this Intel wireless card that I pulled out from my dead Acer Aspire 1690 laptop, including its antennas. There's one antenna here and another here. These antennas may not get very good signal inside this case, but it does pick up my access point nearby. This is a switch that detects if you open the case. Unfortunately, about a week after I got this computer, I ran into a pretty serious problem. The CPU fan stopped working. This is the fan that was in this computer. It's pretty hefty, but it just stopped spinning. For a while, it was still working after giving it a push, but now it doesn't work at all. And I tried taking it apart and cleaning it, but it didn't make a difference. So I thought of just replacing it. It uses a 4-pin connector. And as you can see right there, I did install a new fan. I pulled this out of my HP Compact 6000. That the cable that goes from the fan to the motherboard is too short. The original fan had a way longer cable. This fan is supposed to be installed inside here. You have to remove this plastic baffle, and there's also this baffle that goes in after you installed the fan. But with this short cable it doesn't reach, so I had to wedge it in here between the holes that go to the outside and the heat sink, and then just install this baffle on it to keep it in place. And it doesn't do a very good job, especially since this fan is less powerful. It's only 0.4 amps, while the original one was 1.1 amps, but it's better than nothing, of course. With about half an hour of usage, the Pentium 4 CPU heats up to about 70 degrees Celsius, but doesn't seem to go any higher than that, so I think that's okay, especially for a Pentium 4. I want to replace this fan with a proper one with higher power and longer cable, but for now this is the best I can do. And this blue thing is just to hold the cards you install. So I just installed this air baffle here, not correctly, but it holds the fan against the heat sink in the best way possible. And here we can release the front panel in case we want to remove it. That's just for changing the drives here. Here's the inside of the side panel. Here's the locking mechanism with the button you press to unlock the case. And here's a sticker explaining everything inside this computer. Which was pretty helpful. In fact, that's how I discovered that was a mini PCI slot. And also on the front near the power button, there are indicator lights for power, hard drive activity, Ethernet, and warning. This light lit up when the fan stopped working, although it also gave a warning in the BIOS setup, of course. It's all plugged in. Let's turn it on now. We'll go to the BIOS setup. And see, every time I unplug this computer and plug it back in, it says AC power has been restored, but that's not a big deal. Anyway, here's the BIOS setup. So we can see some info about the RAM, CPU. I updated the BIOS to the latest version, which is from November 17th, 2006. We can set the SATA controller to AHCI, or even RAID if more than one drive is plugged in. But there's no SSD installed, and I plan to do some things with older operating systems on just one drive, so we'll leave it set to compatible mode, which means compatible with older IDE. And one pretty annoying thing is that even though it has a boot menu, if you want to boot up from a USB drive, you can't select it from the boot menu. It only has an option for hard disk. And if you select that, it chooses the first hard disk, which is the actual hard drive, not the USB drive. So you have to insert the USB drive, go to the BIOS setup, and always set the USB drive as the first hard drive. And then it will work until you unplug it. So it's a bit annoying, but doesn't take that much time to go to the BIOS setup every time you want to boot up from a USB drive. Removable devices is the floppy drive. You can enable or disable hyperthreading, cache, and no execute. And here we can monitor the CPU temperature. This is the only part where I've seen it work. I tried various programs to monitor the CPU temperature under Windows, such as Hardware Monitor and Core Temp, but they all can't read the temperature. It says 0 degrees. But here in the BIOS setup, it does read the CPU temperature correctly. And the fan is always around 700 RPM. And this is one of the times when the BIOS had an error about the fan. See, several times when I was trying to start this computer. And that's it for the BIOS. Of course, it was designed for Windows XP, but we've got to try something more interesting on here. So now it's time to check out some operating systems. When I first got this computer, it had a clean installation of Windows XP with no OEM software or partitions. But since this computer is older than the ones I've been using, I wanted to start with some older stuff. Out of the Windows 90X versions, my favorite is 95 because that's what I used in the first part of my childhood until we switched straight to XP. However, I thought 98 would work better on here since it's a little newer, even though this PC is still far too new for it. How far though? To give it its best shot, I tried this unofficial Windows 98 10th anniversary disk from 2008. I used it to create a new partition, then I installed it. It didn't have any RAM problems, 1GB is right at the limit. The installation went through with no issues, although the installed OS kept freezing whenever the MS-DOS prompt was closed. But now it was working, so I tried installing drivers. If I could only choose one driver, it would have to be the video driver. 640 by 480 with 4-bit color is just not good enough. We have to bump it up to 1080p with 32-bit color. No, I'm kidding, it doesn't have to be that high, but it has to be better than the basics. This 98 10th anniversary disc comes with some driver packs, including NVIDIA video card drivers. And here it is, there's the Quadro FX 550. So I tried installing it. For some reason it was showing 2 video adapters even though there's only one. I tried removing one and installing drivers on the other. The first time it failed, but the second time... Holy crap, it actually worked this time. So now we've got Windows 98 at 1080p. Even the NVIDIA settings are working. And that's the device manager, so all I had to do was remove the right one. I guess last time I removed the wrong one. I plugged in a USB flash drive. And it looks like it has drivers for it. There it is. Then I tried installing some sound drivers. This computer has SoundMax AC97 audio, so I tried installing some Windows 98 drivers for it, and it doesn't boot up anymore. It gets stuck here. I looked in Device Manager in safe mode, but couldn't find a sound driver that failed to install. I also briefly looked for chipset drivers. This MS9162 motherboard has an Intel 955X chipset, which is too new for anything older than Windows 2000. 2000 is NT based, it's nothing like 98. But hey, we can try ME, it's still a version of Windows 9X. No really, even its system files folder in the installation CD is called Win9X. But that was even worse. It froze in the middle of the second stage of the installation. Well, I could have reinstalled Windows 98 and tried other sound drivers, but I was really curious to try 95 instead. How delusional could I get? If 98 and ME don't work properly, how can 95? In fact, it had some problems early on. It said there wasn't enough memory, which is a result of having too much memory. Very ironic. Turns out Windows 95's RAM limit is a bit lower than 98's. So I had to edit system.ini to limit the RAM. I could have taken out the RAM stick to downgrade it to 512 megs, but the software way was easier. Also, Windows 95 crashes with a protection error on Intel CPUs faster than 2.0 GHz. This one is 3.0. So I burned the CD with the fixed 95 CPU program and patched it. After patching, it booted up with no drivers just like 98. But then I looked in the device manager and saw it only has the video adapter once, which is correct. No way the 98 drivers are easier to install on 95, are they? Unbelievable, it worked first try. I couldn't find working AC97 audio drivers for Windows 95. But I couldn't give up. I needed to hear Windows 95 make a sound on this computer. So I installed the PC speaker sound drivers from Windows 3.1. And they're horrible. They may be better than nothing, but the entire system freezes while the sound is playing, even if you enable this setting. That's why it can set a limit to how long sounds can be played for. I also had to experiment with the speed setting several times, and yet it still sounds muffled and distorted. But remember, this is the PC speaker that's only supposed to do beeps, so it's pretty impressive that it can be set up to play waveforms. What about network? This computer, like many others of the era, has Broadcom Net Extreme Gigabit Ethernet, but after a quick search I couldn't find Windows 95 or 98 drivers for it. Even though we avoided the Windows protection error when starting up, we still get one when shutting down or restarting. Unfortunately, this still counts as an improper shutdown, so it usually runs ScanDisk when starting back up, but thankfully it's very quick. How about DOS games? Well, they're not very useful without working sound, but I downloaded some DOS benchmarks, and here you can see that this PC is playing the games way too fast. You really need a more period-appropriate computer. So much for Windows 95. Now let's look at something more compatible, like Windows 2000. It's very similar to XP, but I already have XP on another computer, so let's try 2000 on here. I have a tiny bit of nostalgia for this OS too, because I used it in elementary school. My favorite feature was the maze screensaver, which was removed from XP. Here I could try connecting to Wi-Fi with the Wi-Fi card I installed. However, Windows 2000 doesn't support connecting to Wi-Fi networks, you have to install the driver that comes with the card. And now I was able to connect to my Wi-Fi. It's not very fast, but it works. Of course, Gigabit Ethernet would work and be faster, but the fact that works is nothing to write home about. Now let's try something that I haven't experienced in over 20 years, the parallel port. This is a no-name parallel port CD drive my family got about 25 years ago. It has its cover off, but it works fine. I just plugged it in, turned it on, and turned the computer on. Windows 2000 showed a hardware ID, so I looked it up online and found out this parallel port enclosure is by SCM. And here are its drivers on driver guide. Many people talk smack about that site, but it's proven to be extremely helpful with this IntelliStation, even for other components. That site used to bundle adware installers, but now you can download drivers from it directly. I couldn't find drivers for this computer anywhere else. And after learning the enclosure's name, I could find drivers for Windows 95 too. I think I have a very faint memory of Shuttle. I'm pretty sure this is what we used back when we had a Windows 95 computer. And we can listen to audio CDs through the drive itself, even on Windows 95 where there are no sound drivers installed. It's the CD drive that's processing the digital audio, not the computer. Normally the CD drive's audio output goes to the sound card, so you hear it through your computer. But with the drive in this enclosure, it's going to these line-out jacks. The computer is only used to control what's being played. Great, now let's try something newer. Here is Windows 7. This Pentium 4 is actually 64-bit, but with only 1 GB of RAM, I decided to install the 32-bit version. This Quadro FX 550 can handle 1080p with Windows Aero just fine, but something weird happens when trying to calculate the Windows Experience Index. It crashes every time, so I can't calculate it. Windows 10 could actually work on here too, but it would be way too slow without hardware upgrades. As for Linux, I couldn't get anything modern to work. I tried Ubuntu 22.04, 20.04, and 18.04, including lightweight versions. They just get stuck at a blank screen after booting up the live USB drive, probably because of not enough RAM. I tried Arch, which installed fine, but the final OS didn't boot up. It got stuck here. I tried the Knoppix Live DVD, which does work, but I didn't install it. Maybe a more suitable but still esoteric Linux distribution would work, but I haven't had the time to try something like that. If I installed more RAM and a SATA SSD, this computer may actually perform decently with a modern OS, but this 17-year-old Pentium 4 may not cut it anymore, especially due to its power inefficiency. I'm afraid this computer is just a little bit too obsolete for modern tasks, while still being too new for interesting old operating systems. Unless you're young enough to think Windows XP is vintage, XP would run terrifically on this computer. By the way, keep in mind that if you're gonna use Windows XP or 2000 on this computer, you need to install the AC97 audio driver from SoundMax, not Realtek. Tools like Snappy Driver Installer suggest the Realtek driver, which works fine on Windows 7 and 10 and maybe Vista, but it makes 2000 and XP crash. So that's about it for this IBM IntelliStation M Pro Type 6218. Despite its limitation for both old and new software, I had a good time messing with it. This was a superb workstation for its time. Now it's showing its age, but it doesn't deserve being thrown out. Thank you for watching.